It's no secret that I love a hot hatchback. I've done many videos on them in the past, but thinking about the past, why don't we go all the way back to some classic hot hatchbacks that pioneered this world of hot hatches that we live in today. How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. I've struggled to do classic car videos in the past because it's so hard. There are so many classic cars to choose from, but in this video I'm going to talk about 5 particularly interesting hot hatchbacks that you can buy for under £20,000. In my opinion, all of them are pretty amazing classic cars to some degree, but don't forget that I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may be different, and whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that good stuff is important to remember. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, by the way. What is the best classic hot hatchback? I'm talking cars like the Delta Integrale HF, I'm talking about cars like the Mark 1 Golf GTI. Let me know in the comments down below. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. If it hits 1,000 likes, I'll do another video at maybe under £10,000 instead. Subscribe as well if you're new here. Without further ado, let's get into the video. I don't know about you, but when I think about classic hot hatchbacks, in fact about hot hatchbacks more broadly, the Mark 1 Golf GTI is one of the first cars to come to my mind as a pioneer in this space. It absolutely wasn't the first ever hot hatch, as there are other examples that claim to be the first, like the 1973 Simca 1100 Ti or the 1976 Renault 5 Gordini, but for many of us the Mark 1 GTI set the standard for how hot hatches should be, as lightweight, cheap and fast little cars that could punch well above their weight classes on tight twisty country lanes. On release it came with a 1.6 litre inline-4 engine that produces 109 brake horsepower, which took it to 60 in around 8.6 seconds, which is obviously not fast by today's standards, but at the time meant this little car could genuinely trouble some period supercars on twisty roads. When you get into a new Golf GTI today, you'll find tartan seats, a golf ball gear stick, red accents and GTI badging, which is the same as the historic GTI's formula. These ideas came from Gunhild Liljeqvist, as she was tasked with making the interior different to the standard Golf. Part of the wider goal, of course, was to make a car that was both fast and also practical enough to be a little runaround car for you and your family, and can do the majority of things that you throw at it. The main difference between these and the modern day GTIs is surely the gearbox, as the Mark 1 came exclusively as a 4-speed manual as opposed to the farting DSGs of today. The Golf arrived to replace the Beetle, and originally there were no plans to make a hot example, but following a secret internal project that happened without even senior VW bods knowing, it did finally get released in 1977, and the rest is pretty much history. Prices have only gone one way with these, and you'll find them starting at around the £14,000 mark for drivable ones. At £20,000 you'll definitely get into a reasonable example, but I'm just not sure how much longer that statement will be true. Pre-1980 cars are known to have worse rust proofing, so look for something newer if possible, but the engines are known to be very strong and live a long time, as are gearboxes. Next up, it's the third generation Ford Fiesta RS Turbo, which dropped in 1990 and ran on until 1992. It's an absolutely stunning car, hence Ford whipped out that RS badge again for it, as they had done on previous rallying focus models like the RS 200, and it is, in many respects, one of the granddads of the hot hatch contingent of fast Fords. That's in part thanks to its 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine that produces 133 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.7 seconds. It was based on the XR2i, which is another well-loved Ford, and it does look pretty similar visually on the exterior, but you can spot the difference with the 14-inch alloys, some slight accent differences with the green around the car, the iconic bonnet louvers, and some green tinting on the glass. On the inside it's also different, with the classic hot hatch formula, Recaro sport seats, RS logos everywhere, and a 3-spoke sport steering wheel. On release it didn't actually get particularly good press though, with reviewers noting that the car didn't handle too well as a result of the steering feeling a bit light and detached from the wheels. Despite this, it was one of the most stolen cars during the period in the early 90s where joyriding was becoming more popular, so its poor handling didn't do much to dissuade thieves. And the handling was much better than the XR2i, as RS did a great job of making the car communicate better with the driver, but it still wasn't on the same level as many of its contemporaries. Today though, that hardly matters, as none of the classic hot hatches will perform anywhere close to the modern ones, so if you go for one of these, it has to be for the love of the car and the love of a classic fast Ford. These start at around £14,000, but they are hard to come by, and for 20k you'll get a nice example, but of course, as with many classic cars, expect to spend some time and money on preventative maintenance and minor restoration if you want it to be perfect. Rust is known but not a huge problem on these, and the engine and gearbox can both suffer if not maintained, though they're generally known to be okay, and that includes the turbo. Taking third on the list is another spiritual father of the hot hatch world, and a car that was tremendously popular across the UK and Europe in particular. The Peugeot 205 GTI was an absolutely game-changing hot hatch, weighing in at just 900 kilograms, with a key focus on handling and enjoyment. It hosts a 1.9 litre inline-4 engine that makes 130 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds. Not bad at all for a car that was released back in 1984. This car really was an incredible success for Peugeot, and since its release they have never been able to recreate that level of success in any of their GTI offerings. It's literally still referred to in reviews of newer GTIs to see if the new Peugeot stand up to it, as it was probably the class leader in its time. Part of its sales success came from its rallying brilliance, as it dominated during 1985 and 1986 in the World Rally Championship during the Group B rally era, taking over from the previously dominant Audi Quattro, which is pretty incredible. Of course, that was the 205 T16, which did also get a homologation special, but considering those are few and far between, plus they're incredibly expensive, the 205 GTI has always been the next best thing, and it was still a popular rally car in the Group A class, and you'll still see them bashing around at historic events today. Aesthetically, it's a very simple looking car, with the main differences between it and the standard 205 being the plastic wheel arches and trim, plus all the GTI badging. It is more useful than the standard car though, of course, with completely redesigned suspension that sits lower and stiffer, as well as ARBs to get the handling to feel sharp. What's so cool about these today is that Peugeot's heritage brand now offer a factory restoration program that you can restore your 205 GTI to as new condition using original brand new OEM parts, some of which haven't been available for many years. This really shows how exceptionally well loved these cars are. These have been going up so much in price recently, and they now start at around £10,000, with 20 grand getting you a pretty lovely example with around 70,000 miles on it. Dents are known on these as the steel is famously thin, and rust isn't normally a huge deal but does happen. Glass sunroofs have also been known to go wrong, and some electrical connections can erode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are, a quick reminder, do hit subscribe if you're new here, and the like button as well to get to 1,000 likes on this video if possible. And in the comments down below, what is the best classic hot hatchback? What is the car that pioneered this hot hatchback space? Let me know. On to a personal favourite now in second, the Renault 5 GT Turbo, which is another iconic hot hatch, introduced in 1985 as the hot hatch craze was expanding throughout Europe as the cheaper second generation alternative to the rally homologation cars like the Turbo and Turbo 2. It has a very old turbocharged 1.4 litre inline-4 that makes 120 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. This car was all about power to weight ratio, which is why it gets to 60 in a pretty aggressive time for its age. It weighs just 853 kilograms, which is less than a Lotus Elise, for example. Add on the fact that the car suspension was lower and stiffer, it had disc brakes all around, which is pretty solid for its age, plus the aesthetic similarities and design language of the Renault Alpine V6 GT, and you've got yourself a little monster. It had two phases, with a facelift in 1987 that brought about water cooling to the turbocharger, meaning it was both oil and water cooled, which was incredibly important for the longevity of that turbo. It was also enabled to do around 500 extra RPMs, and the exterior was given some slight modifications around the wheel arches and bumpers in particular. All these modifications weren't trivial either. The Renault 5 GT Turbo remains the only Group N car in history to win a WRC event overall, that being the 1989 Côte d'Ivoire Rally, and if you know anything about rallying, you know that is pretty insane. These were incredibly sought after by younger drivers back when they were released in the 1980s, and before insurance prices started to go mental in the 1990s, they were renowned as a boy racer car. So it's incredible that today we see them as appreciating classics, and untouched ones are becoming both increasingly sought after and hard to find, meaning prices are going through the roof. You'll need to spend around £15,000 to get into one of these, and for £20,000 you get a nice one with around 70,000 miles on the clock. Head gasket failure is known, so do all the precautionary dipstick and coolant checks, and check for electrical gremlins too, as there are many on these. Oil seals and turbos are also known to go, and clutches can go as well. Taking the top spot purely because it's absolutely rapid, it's the Nissan Pulsar GTI-R, which was built built to take part in rallying, and though success was mixed, on the roads is effectively Godzilla in hatchback form. It has a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine that makes 220 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.5 seconds, helped in part by its all-wheel drive layout. It was indeed a homologation special, and here in Europe it was actually named the Nissan Sunny, and wasn't particularly well regarded. The rally car wasn't very successful as mentioned, winning no rallies, but Stig Blomqvist did manage a 3rd place at the 1992 Swedish Rally, and another rallying legend, Tommy Mäkinen, also drove it. It was a great car in the Group N class though, as after Nissan Motorsport Europe quit the World Rally Championship, it went on to win the Group N Cup. The car was basically very competent, but just not at the highest echelons of rallying. But a car that can compete at any level of rallying and is a homologation special is an excellent car in my books. I would say that the GTI-R is a classic version of the GR Yaris we see on the roads today. An all-wheel drive, homologation special hot hatch with ridiculous performance considering its engine size. There are actually only 500 specific homologation examples of this car though to satisfy FIA regulations to enter the Group A class of WRC, but there are also 5,000 in total across all GTI-Rs, so you can get into a standard example much more easily. I love how it looks, particularly when it gets the rally lights on the front and the iconic quad scoop on the bonnet. It comes from a time when Nissan were making some properly cool other race cars like the R390, which I've mentioned before, which is where Nissan Motorsport put all their money when they cancelled the Pulsar's rally efforts. These start around the 10k mark, and for £20,000 you'll be looking at a 1994 example in excellent condition. The biggest problem from a maintenance perspective is getting parts. They can be difficult to find. There are known oil leaks and timing chain problems, plus the cooling system has been known to have issues which can lead to further failures. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, and subscribe as well if you're new here. Massive thanks to the patrons as always for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.